Okay.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our first episode of the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles. And let me just give a quick introduction to what we're doing here today. The Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles is a one of a kind podcast that's going to converse with passionate abandoned mine reclamation partners and highlight outstanding work and showcase stream restoration work, and stream improvement projects and successes, and share emergent ideas and technologies in the field of abandoned mine reclamation. And I'm one of your hosts here today, Bobby Hughes, the executive director for the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation. And I'll turn it over to Ann Damon here.
Oh, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, we're very excited to start this new endeavor that we have going here, which came about as a result of our first joint visioning session between Whipcammer and Epcammer in over 25 years. We're hopeful that this live streaming personal interviews will discuss timely topics related to abandoned mine reclamation and will engage our audience in a whole new level. So we're live streaming on both Whipcammer and Epcammer YouTube channels, as well as Epcammer's Facebook pages and Bobby's very famous personal Facebook page as well. So if wherever you're watching from, go ahead and pop your questions and comments into the comments box and we'll be able to moderate here and you can ask your questions live.
All right, well, thanks, Ann. Well, first off here, I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker here for our first episode, and it's Deb Nardone. And Deb is currently the executive director for the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. They're a grant-making foundation that kind of invests in local efforts to protect healthy natural streams, clean up pollution, and restore degraded wildlife habitats across Pennsylvania. And most of the viewers might be familiar with Foundation for PA Watershed if they've applied for a grant or received some funding from them. And the Foundation for PA Watersheds is a source of matching funds for a lot of the state, local, and federal grants that we apply for in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it provides matching funds for those grants to both small and large groups and organizations throughout Pennsylvania. And it's kind of a supporting organization of the community foundations for the Alleghenies. And through the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds grant making, assistance has been provided to conservation organizations in order to achieve their restoration goals while ensuring clean water for future generations and other Pennsylvanians that are working and hoping to have clean water for their children, their families, and the wildlife that we so much enjoy here in Pennsylvania. And previous to joining the Foundation for PA Watersheds back in 2024, Deb was the executive director of the Clearwater Conservancy, which is an accredited land trust and conservation organization that serves central Pennsylvania. And during her 8-year tenure there, she helped to conserve over 3,500 acres of permanent protection. She created the long-term vision for the organization known as the Clearwater Compass, and she launched a very highly successful centered outdoors program, doubled the number of staff, and increased the organization's endowment by 500%. Man, we just want to get an endowment started here, so I'm hoping we could pick her brain here soon. So welcome, Deb, and I'll pass it back to Ann here.
Yeah, just a quick welcome from me as well. And really, first and foremost, we have to start this conversation by thanking you directly and the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds for underwriting our first 12 episodes here of the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles podcast. And yeah, we're very excited to get to know you better and have our audience get to know you better. So yeah, any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments box. And back to Bobby.
Yeah, so kind of let's maybe just kick this episode off with learning a little bit more about you, Deb. Like, where did you grow up, and where are you currently living, and maybe some background on you and your family.
Yeah, sure. So I'm really excited to join the initial first podcast. It's been fun thinking about the kinds of things that we can talk about today. But to I would give a little bit of background. I actually grew up in coal country. I grew up in the Northeast part of Pennsylvania in Plains, actually, which is between Wilkes-Barre and Pittston. My backyard was a coal bank. That's where I grew up playing. We used to climb up to the top of the coal banks and surf down. We used to take our shoes off before we played in the Orange Creek so that we didn't stain our shoes before we got home. It had such I guess, an impact on me as a child, just playing in coal country and in Plains. But I live in State College now. I've been living in central Pennsylvania since I went to college at Juniata in the early 90s. But my passion to work on acid mine drainage and abandoned mine reclamation work really started once I went to college. I recognized that not all kids grow up in coal country, that there are places you can live where the streams are clean and healthy, and the mountains are forested with trees, and wanted to work as much as I could to help clean up the pollution that was in my backyard. So that's kind of where it started. Again, I live in the State College area. My husband works at Penn State, and I have a son who just graduated high school, heading to University of Vermont here in a couple of weeks.
That's good. You can see some folks in the chat here are talking about some of their experience as well. Some of our friends and colleagues here. Just I'd like to say hello to one of our bunch of volunteers that we have coming in here, Chris O'Rourke and Jessica Latier, talking about some of the same experiences that you were having. Skating down coal banks was an experience as a kid, or going sleigh riding. That's something that I think many of us have done across the state here. So good.
Yeah, for sure. I have a question. Actually, Bobby probably wanted to ask this, but I'm going to get to. So we hear from Bobby that your mom, Susan, is an extremely talented artist. What kind of art does she make?
So my mom and dad still live in Plains, and my mama does mostly watercolors and some oils. And actually, I learned a lot about Epcamer, maybe even before I knew you, Bobby. My
Wow.
mom takes art classes at Sue Hands out in the back mountain. And Sue is one of the artists that uses the pigment in her paintings, and I think has done some things for you at Epcamer. So yeah, my mom, you can find her at Sue's studio. It was interesting to, after I got the chance to meet you, to learn more about your work with a lot of the artists in the Wyoming Valley.
Yeah, I bet Bobby would like to give your mom some of their iron oxide pigments.
Yeah, we've talked. I've chatted with her
Oh,
on Facebook. We're obviously Facebook friends, and Sue
oh,
Hand is a dear colleague of ours that has worked with us for decades. And she's done so much work through either the Wyoming Valley Art League or Sue Hand's Imagery and the AFA Gallery in Scranton. We've worked with a number of artists over the last 20 plus years where they've taken the iron oxide pigment that we're recovering for some of the treated AMD systems and just working it into our art programs that we're working with kids in the schools and youth and different art classes. And there's just so many positive ways that we can take that pollution source and turn it into something, really beautiful and artistic. And so Sue, and I've seen some of Susan's work at Abide Coffee House and some other places. And I'm going to just take a bunch of iron oxide up to Sue's and, drop some off for her and hope that maybe she could create a piece, and I'll hang it in my office here, just like Sue has done for us in the past.
yeah,
We would love that.
yeah. And I hear there's also a Nardone's Pizza in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Well, there are lots of Nardones in the Wyoming Valley.
Oh, okay.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've got family that are in the food industry. My mom and dad ran a business in the Wyoming Valley for a long time that actually serves a lot of the pizza shops that are all up and down the valley. And my brother runs that business located in Plains right now. But Nardone's Pizza was a staple for sure. It reminds me of like the pizza that you got in like high school or your local football games or something like that. I actually craved it a lot when I was pregnant. So I was able to find it at a grocery store here in State College. So yeah, but again, there's tons of Nardones in the Wyoming Valley.
Awesome.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, we would actually walk in Wilkes-Barre, growing up in the Heights. A few blocks away was one of the Nardone kind of distribution places that you just walked in to the counter and paid for your box of pizza or two boxes and brought them home. And they have a distribution center that's right here in the Hanover Industrial Park, just around the corner from our office. But yeah, Deb's right. I mean, it was a staple. It still is. I think it's like $6.99 for a box, and so that's really great, really affordable. And you could eat it cold or you could eat it hot, and it's one of the staples here in the Wyoming Valley for sure. So yeah, Nardone's is pretty famous around here, but not as famous as Deb.
Pizza in the Northeast is unique alone in itself. I wish we could get some like old Ford style pizza here in the State College region. That would be amazing. But I have to travel. I travel home to visit my family and get pizza.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for giving us an opportunity to know a little bit more about you personally. I know you also have a son that's starting college this week or next week, moving in.
Yep. Couple of weeks. He'll be starting at University of Vermont in Burlington.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what will he be studying?
He's studying business. So he's really excited they have a very unique business program that also has an angle of entrepreneurship and sustainability. So that's where he's heading. And we're looking forward to spending some time up there to visit.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's good. Well, Deb, I'm wondering if we could just maybe get a little background information on, just your education and your career to date and how you've sort of, moved from the great work that you were doing at the Clearwater Conservancy to the foundation, and filling some really big shoes from our friend and colleague, John Dawes, and others at the foundation that have just been so supportive and just mentors for us. And it seems like that mentorship and that partnership is continuing with you now coming to the head of the organization. And it'd be really good to just get a little bit more about your background and career.
Yeah. So I went to Juniata College in central Pennsylvania, and then went to Penn State for grad school. And as I had mentioned, I grew up in coal country and recognized that there was a lot of work that needed to be done in order to clean up our backyards. And so I was studying geology and environmental science. And actually, that's where I met John for the very first time. I was a sophomore in college doing an internship. I was actually taking water quality data in the Broadtop coal fields. We were trying to assess some of the larger discharges, where the water was coming from, what the quality was, to figure out how to best treat it. And that was actually part of an internship that became an undergraduate thesis while I was at Juniata. I was doing that with Huntingdon County Conservation District. And they actually introduced me to John. It would have been probably about 1994, maybe. And John was introduced to me as a local farmer. And that he is. He's definitely a gentleman farmer, but he's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And so, after I graduated Juniata, I went to Penn State and studied environmental engineering. But I really enjoyed working in the nonprofit sector. My experiences working with the Conservation District. And then if you remember the Resource Conservation and Development Councils, RC&Ds, that operated for quite a while, continued to do my research and internships there, and knew that I wanted to stay in the nonprofit sector. I felt like that was the place where you could have the most impact. And so while I was in grad school, I accepted a position with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation as their Juniata River conservation coordinator, and spent many years working hand in hand with local municipalities and nonprofits. Our work was to get the Juniata River listed on the Rivers Conservation Registry with DCNR, and that would help bring dollars into the region to continue to make water quality improvements on the Juniata River. From there, I worked with Trout Unlimited with the Pennsylvania Council of Trout Unlimited, working hand in hand with all of the Trout Unlimited chapters across Pennsylvania to strategize on how to protect headwater streams. And it was during that work that we started to see some pretty significant impact on our headwater streams from a growing oil and gas boom that we had in Pennsylvania. Many of our headwater streams were starting to see gas pads put in place. Regulations in Pennsylvania were for conventional drilling. Unconventional drilling was just getting started. And so I took the opportunity to jump over at that point to the Sierra Club, where we started the Beyond Natural Gas campaign. And I worked in Pennsylvania, but I also worked with lots of states across the country, in Colorado and Utah, New York, really trying to figure out what some of the best policies states could implement to better protect both air and water, as unconventional oil and gas drilling, hydrofracking was starting to be a bigger part of local communities. And so during that work, again, was working both locally but also nationally. I was there for quite a long time doing that work. And then an opportunity came up to work at Clearwater Conservancy, the local land trust in my backyard. Had, I've spent almost 10 years actually there before coming here to the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. And Clearwater is an accredited land trust. It's been operating for over 40 years. It's a very well-respected nonprofit here in the State College region. It had passionate volunteers and a board, much like the nonprofits and the boards that you have at EPCAMR and WIPCAMR, people who really wanted to make an impact. During the 10 years that I was there, I was able to grow staff, to grow their endowment, to really set focus on a strategic plan. We had some pretty big wins. We launched the Centered Outdoors program, as you mentioned, which was an opportunity to get more people outside and enjoy the places that were in their backyard. You can't protect water, you can't protect land, and work hand in hand to conserve it unless people understand the value. And so we wanted to get people outside as often as we could. And that program continues to grow and actually be an example for a lot of other communities who are trying to engage people in the outdoors. We also had a number of really important land conservation efforts. One of them was the conservation of the Dry Hollow property. It was almost 1,300 acres that we got to add to the Rothrock State Forest. In State College, our drinking water comes from below our feet, not from a reservoir or a stream, but from the groundwater. And so a big part of that work was to figure out how to best protect the most important places that were filters for our drinking water. So we did a lot of work on source water protection as well. I've had the opportunity to work in conservation and nonprofit for over 30 years. More than that, really. As I mentioned, I was a young sophomore when I first met John Dawes, who was the previous executive director at the foundation. When John decided to retire, I really valued both the work that the foundation does, but also really valued John's voice. He's been a champion for conservation for a very long time and has had some pretty significant accomplishments to help bring important dollars to Pennsylvania. And so really wanted the opportunity to kind of follow in his footsteps. Being on the nonprofit side for so long and seeing how hard communities work to bring dollars to the table to make projects happen, the opportunity to figure out how to help put those dollars in place at the community level was something I really wanted to do. I had mentioned earlier the rivers conservation work on the Juniata. We were actually the second grantee for the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. It was right when John was launching the initiative. So I've been able to watch the foundation grow in that time and really watch masterful work that John did during that time. And so it's been fun to kind of come full circle to see it at its very beginning and now to figure out how to help it grow.
That's interesting because I remember years ago the DCNR, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, that program for the rivers conservation plan was one of many programs that was offered through that side of the state. In the terms of their sister organization with DEP and other programs that they offered to do a rivers conservation plan to us, and we did one for the Wickinisco Creek watershed in Dauphin and Schuylkill County, and we helped out with one up here in the North Branch on the Susquehanna with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. I mean, it sort of sets the stage for future implementation projects once you can do some assessment work and once you can highlight the recreational opportunities and the water quality and just various landmarks within the watersheds. And those are things that lead to other projects. And by getting some of those projects on the ground through the planning efforts, much like what we try to do today in the AMD world, is to do the assessment work and the development work that is getting out into the communities and, building relationships, building coalitions and partnerships. It's the same thing still, 30 some odd years later, but a number of other programs are now providing that opportunity to do that. And for the groups that like us and ours and other watershed associations and conservation district partners and conservation organizations that are doing the same work, it's kind of vital to have that funding so that we can spend some time in those communities and put the proper kind of monitoring in place and assessment field work that needs to get done with boots on the ground to really make a better case for projects that need to be fully funded for both cleanup and or recreational opportunities and just maybe historical and cultural amenities that could be highlighted within those communities. And so it's much bigger than just the water quality. It's about the quality of life. It's about the quality of the people's lives in the areas. And I don't think we could do that without foundation support like yours. And many of us in the regions that we work in don't have big philanthropic organizations that we can go to. Pittsburgh and the Philadelphia areas, they might. But they're smaller foundations that we can work with in our areas, in particular here in the Northeast, like the Scranton Area Foundation or the Luzerne Foundation and Pasco Shivo Foundation. There's some that are able to support us in small ways. And Foundation has been very good about supporting us and our partners in our regions in big ways. And so we thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll continue on that. I started my career in the watershed AMD community in like the early 2000s, and Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds was already really established as a foundation for really supporting what watersheds were out there doing. And I just remember meeting John Dawes for the first time, and he was like a movie star. He just had this aura about him that he was so just a beautiful person inside and out, and so generous and kind. And I really do see you filling those enormous shoes so well already. You're just a pleasure to be around and talk to. So
thanks.
Yeah. And we are getting some comments too. And perfectly timed, I see Christy Sweeney. She's a partner of ours from ARIPA, the anthracite, help me out, Bobby.
The Anthracite Region Independent Power Producers Association.
Yeah. And she says, digging the new podcast. Deb, do you have a favorite or most memorable project you've worked on throughout your career?
Yeah. So I had mentioned earlier when I was in college doing a lot of water quality monitoring in the Broadtop coal fields. One of the things we were trying to figure out was there's a massive discharge called the Dudley discharge. A lot of water, a lot more water that's actually then in that watershed. And so we knew that there had to be water transferring from other watersheds, probably clean water that emptied into the mine shafts below. The initial research to help identify how polluted the water was, and that we identified water was coming from lots of different places. That issue, much like what we see in the Northwest and the Southwest, or the Northeast and the Southwest, these are really complicated things, very expensive to fix. It wasn't really until the last handful of years with a federal IIJA, bipartisan infrastructure law money, that was authorized where we could start to really strategize about cleaning up the worst of the worst. Money was now going to be available to fix the really complicated things that people thought would never be fixed. And so my work now has come full circle. We're talking with DEP right now about how to actually start cleaning up the Dudley discharge with an active treatment system. I think that's one of my favorites, is just seeing things come full circle. And being able to step into, yes, John's big shoes, but at a perfect time when more funding than ever has been available. Rivers Conservation Registry money helped put a lot of stuff on the ground in communities, but it wasn't anywhere near as extensive as what's coming into Pennsylvania now. To give you a scope, it's about $300 million a year coming to Pennsylvania for fixing AMD. If and when we can continue to keep the federal dollars flowing into Pennsylvania, which is a concern, hopefully, we'll see some of the biggest, baddest discharges cleaned up. But we're talking about, 10, 15 active treatment systems that need to go in. Again, favorite project, kind of seeing things full circle, but stepping in at the right time to really know that there's a solution out there. And that's where our local watershed community groups like EPCAMR and WITCAMR, our state agencies, and local government are really starting to collaborate to figure out how to fix it.
Good. I see Christy corrected us there a little bit. I was being a little partial to the anthracite region, so I didn't throw in the word Appalachian. My fault. Well, Deb, I'm wondering if you could just spend a few minutes maybe just talking about, you mentioned, Ann had mentioned about John's mentorship role as you were coming into this position. And I know he's done a tremendous amount of work for both WIPCAMR and EPCAMR as well. And the leadership that he has played both nationally and also within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, in particular for here in Pennsylvania, has been real vital to, I think, funding coming into PA and efforts that you're now partaking in with the Chesapeake Bay Funders Network and other roles that you seem to be filling those shoes. And has he given you some advice or a direction or just any sort of words of wisdom to have you move forward and continue in working to support those efforts here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's a great question. John sees the need for continuous voice to stand up for coal communities. John was essential in seeing, things reauthorized. He was critical in helping pass something called the STREAM Act. So that for every dollar that comes into Pennsylvania for AMD, the state agency has the ability to set it as 30% of it aside to pay for the long-term operations and maintenance of the infrastructure we're building to clean up acid mine drainage, abandoned mine drainage. And so John has just been a voice. He's been a champion for standing up for communities and but it hasn't only been for acid mine drainage or AMD work. He's been a voice for agriculture. He's been a voice for bringing dollars into local communities and long-term support for the grassroots. One of the things that I love the most about John's sensibilities is his ability to understand science and bring a community together around it, understanding that the way we make work happen is the way we leverage dollars, the way that we put a project on the ground is really through collaboration. I saw that firsthand when he first got rolling with the foundation in the early 90s. And he continues to do that. And so, John's been hands-on, hands-off. He steps in when we need him, but also understands that, it's time to let the foundation continue on and grow and mature. So I'm lucky that he still is a part-time contractor. We can lean on him when we need him to, again, be that voice. I think that's one of the things I'll take away is just John's ability to step into a room and understand how to collaborate with people. He was an early mentor for lots of people. I think that's also important for us is, Bobby and Ann and so many of the people that we get to work with, we're mid-career. We've spent a lot of time on the ground doing work, and we probably all had mentors. And yet we've still got a long way to go before we'll ever consider retiring. I have no doubt.
Right.
And so, taking the advice of the people who are mentors and being able to pass that on, and being a mentor yourself is also a way that I see John flourish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. Well,
they're
yeah.
great points. Yeah. Just wondering then, taking that even a step further. So then, even though you are just in your mid-career, you have such a beautiful, history behind you already. Do you have any personal philosophies as an environmental leader that you can share with us?
Oh boy, yes. Again, leaning on the partnerships. Partnerships strengthen our network. They raise the tide for all boats. And so, to me, figuring out how we bring sometimes differences of people, different opinions of people to the table to figure out how to build a partnership and collaborate, I think is an important piece of advice. The other thing that I think made Clearwater very successful is that we stuck to mission. It's very often in the nonprofit world where dollars are hard to bring in to kind of float wherever the dollars are available. And so I think it's important for nonprofits to stay the path, to understand the objective of what you're trying to accomplish, share that vision, and find the dollars to make that happen, and not be swayed to jump from item to item or topic to topic. And again, the mentorship piece, to me, I think is a really important part for us as conservation leaders to think about pretty regularly.
Well, Deb, I'm wondering, as the foundation is going forward, I know we've been on some calls where you've talked about some big plans for the foundation, and maybe a shift in focus in the near future. And I'm wondering, how will you continue to be a leader and supporter of the nonprofit watershed associations and conservation groups that are continuing to look for support, and will you be continuing with your sort of legislative advocacy, and besides, abandoned mines and AMD, and nonprofit support, what else will the foundation be doing going forward?
Yeah. So the first and most important component of what we do at the foundation is to provide money to make conservation happen. We provide grants to communities who are doing innovative conservation that makes important impact at the local level, and we'll continue to do that. One of the things I love about the foundation is they're usually an early investor in projects. It takes a lot to get a project ready. It takes a lot to have it ready to apply to DEP or DCNR or wherever for grant dollars. And often those funders aren't funding what it takes to build up to a shovel-ready project. And so that's really the sweet spot for the foundation, is we want to help build the capacity, give you the things that you need to get a project shovel ready. And we've been really successful at that. On average, for about every dollar we invest into local nonprofits, we're seeing about $17 in grants come back into their organizations, because we've been able to help them stage a project. And so we'll continue to do that work. The foundation has 2 grant cycles a year. And in fact, the current grant cycle just opened with letters of interest being due here at the end of August. So that is one of the things that we'll continue to do. We also saw the need for changing some of our grant making as federal dollars waxed and waned over the last 6 months with some of the executive orders that had been issued. Some nonprofits were mid-stride in project implementation and had their dollars frozen. Some nonprofits had contracts in place but then never got their funding. And so we wanted to be able to support them in providing some operating capital while they were finding out whether their projects could move forward or not. And many of the grants that, conservation districts, nonprofits are working on now regarding with the IIJA money for AMD work, they're reimbursement grants. And so it's asking nonprofits to sometimes pay a fairly large bill, but then wait for that money to come back in as the state looks to reimburse those nonprofits. So one of the new things we launched was a working capital program where we would loan dollars to nonprofits to help with cash flow as they were waiting for reimbursements to come back in at the state level. And yes, the grant program and the policy work have always been the foundation, the base of the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. And our voice is needed again, whether it's weighing in on the Beyond 2025 Chesapeake Bay Agreement, whether it's talking with local legislators about the need for continuing IIJA federal dollars coming into the state, or figuring out how to talk with state agencies and collaborate so that we can put important projects in the right places. So that voice, that ability to weigh in and make change is also a continuation of the work that I'm doing at the foundation.
Oh, great. So how do our listeners and, how does our audience get in touch with you and learn more about your programs and the submit letters of inquiry and all that stuff?
Yeah, our website is www.thefpw.org, the Foundation Pennsylvania Watersheds, fpw.org. You can find the most information there with links to submit a letter of interest. I also have a staff person, Maggie, who is our grants program administrator. Both she and I are always available to talk through projects, to come out and take a look at project sites, or even just to do a phone call and help strategize a little bit about how to raise dollars for important projects that you might have moving. So don't ever hesitate to pick up the phone or shoot an email to both Maggie or me, and we can help figure out how to help make projects happen.
We look forward to meeting Maggie and having her out here as we talked about doing a tour of the anthracite region. I'm sure Whip Camera would offer the same in the bituminous region, and many of the partners that we work with would welcome the same to get you into their watersheds to experience firsthand what they're seeing on the ground and what they'd like to, put in for some of their project proposals. So as we're getting to the tail end here of our first episode, which I hope is going pretty well. It sounds like it is. It looks like it is. And everything seems to be working here. I'd like to kind of maybe ask you as we kind of close the episode, if you had one piece of advice to our community leaders that have a lot of nonprofit watershed groups and conservation folks with respect to their organizations and their capacity and, trying to be sustainable and moving forward in their communities. Do you have any kind of thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience and those folks that are our partners throughout Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Some of the most successful projects that I've ever seen happen on the ground have been ones that have had diverse audiences, multiple opinions, a really good team working together. I don't know anybody who doesn't want clean water in their backyard. And so bringing diverse opinions together to really try and figure out a better future, a better reality that helps clean up the areas. Again, areas that we once thought were too polluted to fix now really have an opportunity. And so having a strong coalition that's willing to stand up, to take action, to be a voice, for us to continually learn, and most important, to defend the work and the dollars that we need to make these projects a reality. Coalitions and partnerships, collaboration are really important.
Wow. Thank you so much, Deb, for this initial episode, joining us here and letting us learn more about you and also for the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds underwriting our first 12 episodes and sponsoring this project. Just so grateful. Yeah, we're just really glad to have you as a friend and partner in abandoned mine reclamation. So
thank you. It's been fun. I'm glad we got to do this together. I'm looking forward to the future episodes.
Yeah, well, we're still looking for some commercial advertisers from any sponsors out there that might want to check us out and get a byline in or something about their work. Very cheap here on the front end of our initial podcast series here. So if you check out our social media pages, particularly the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Community Group or the EPCAMR Facebook page, you'll see a pinned post that has information about how you can become an advertising sponsor for some commercial breaks, or if you'd like to talk about the work that your particular firm is doing within the field of abandoned mine reclamation and watershed restoration, check that out. And for future episodes, we have a bunch of great speakers lined up, and we're kind of feeling them out, getting them scheduled in for these first Fridays of every month here for the next year. And I mean, we think that there's so many people that we could be interviewing that we could do this for another 2 or 3 years. But we'll see how this first season goes, and maybe we can add some folks on down the road. And so I want you to kind of stay tuned for our next episode next week, next month, as we continue to line up some great speakers. Don't know if we had that one confirmed just yet, but I know Ann has been working on it, and we're going to have some really great folks, I think, over the next year on the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles.
Yeah, mark your calendars for Friday, September 5th at 12 noon.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.